Welcome to Myths for Mindfulness. If you've found your way here, chances are you're someone who values a little quiet in your day, someone who finds meaning in stories and peace in slowing down enough to actually think about them. That's exactly what this channel is for. Here, we explore the great myths of the ancient world, not as trivia, not as entertainment, but as something closer to what they were always meant to be, a way of sitting with the big questions about power and courage, fate and choice, what it means to live well in a world that doesn't always cooperate. Every video is designed to give you space to listen, to reflect, and if you need it, to rest. To everyone who watches these videos, genuinely, thank you. You didn't have to choose to spend your time here, and the fact that you did means something. These stories are thousands of years old, and they only stay alive because people like you keep giving them their attention. That's not a small thing. If these videos are useful to you, if they help you wind down, think more clearly, or simply feel a little less alone in the questions you're carrying, then a like or a subscribe does genuinely help. It tells the algorithm that this kind of slow, thoughtful content has a place, and it helps other people who might need exactly this find their way here too. But only if it's earned. Only if it's true. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. Two Visions of Power. Close your eyes for a moment if you are somewhere safe and comfortable enough to do so, or simply let your gaze soften, letting the world around you blur into something gentle and undemanding. Take a slow breath in and let it go. We are going to travel together tonight, not to any place that exists on a map, but to two places that exist in the deepest chambers of the human imagination. Two visions of divine home, two architectures of power so different from one another that comparing them is almost like comparing the ocean to the mountain. Each magnificent, each real in its own way, each telling us something profound about what it means to rule, to endure, and to be strong. One of these places hangs at the crown of a great and ancient tree, its halls glittering with gold, its bridges shimmering like a promise across the sky. It is a place of warriors and poets, of one-eyed kings and hammer-wielding sons, of feasts that last until dawn and battles that echo into eternity. This is Asgard, the enclosure of the Aesir, the home of the Norse gods. The other sits atop the highest peak in all of Greece, wreathed in clouds and divine light, its palaces built of marble and gold so pure that mortal eyes could never look upon them and remain unchanged. It is a place of kings and queens, of tempests and harvest, of love and war and music and death. This is Olympus, the throne of the Greek gods. Both are extraordinary, both are ancient, both have shaped human culture, human art, human language, the very way we tell stories about strength and weakness, about the nature of authority, about what it means for something powerful to eventually fall or to endure. But here is the question that will guide us gently through the next couple of hours together. What is true power? Is power the strength to rule absolutely, to command the sky and the sea, to sit in golden halls and decide the fate of mortals with a word? Or is power something quieter and stranger? The courage to fight when you know you cannot win, to seek wisdom even when it costs you something precious, to hold your world together not through dominance but through sacrifice. Asgard and Olympus give us two very different answers to that question. And as we explore both of them tonight, slowly, carefully, without rushing, I think we will find that both answers illuminate something real about strength, about leadership, and about what it means to be alive in a world that does not always cooperate with our wishes. There is no pressure to remember everything. There is no test at the end. This is simply a journey, An unhurried walk through two of the most beautiful, mythological landscapes the human mind has ever created. Let us begin. Before we move deeper into our exploration, let us take just a moment to appreciate the sheer scale of what we are dealing with. Human beings have been telling stories about gods for as long as we have been telling stories at all. Cave paintings from tens of thousands of years ago suggest ritual, belief, a sense that the world is inhabited by forces beyond the merely physical. Every civilization we know of has developed some form of mythology, some way of imagining what lies behind the thunder, the harvest, the turning of the seasons, the mystery of death, and whatever, if anything, follows it. The Norse and Greek traditions are among the richest and most fully developed of all these mythological systems. They are both ancient. The earliest traces of both traditions reach back thousands of years, long before the texts we have today were written down, and they have both proved remarkably resilient, surviving the rise and fall of the civilizations that created them, the coming of new religions, the transformation of culture after culture, to arrive here, intact and vivid, in our own time. That resilience is itself worth wondering at. We will return to the question of why these stories last. For now, let us simply acknowledge it and carry it with us as we travel. Chapter 2. Where power lives, realms and structure. Before we can understand the gods themselves, we need to understand where they live. Because the home of a deity is never just a backdrop. It is a reflection of everything that deity values, everything that culture believes about the nature of the divine. And the homes of the Norse and Greek gods could not be more different. Let us start with Asgard. In the oldest Norse sources, the Prose Edda, the Poetic Edda, the great tapestry of saga literature that has come down to us from medieval Iceland, Asgard is described as one of 9 distinct realms, all of them arranged around and connected to a single, colossal cosmic structure, the World Tree, Yggdrasil. Say that name slowly to yourself. Yggdrasil. It is one of the most extraordinary concepts in all of world mythology, an ash tree so vast that its roots reach into 3 separate wells, its branches spread across all 9 worlds, and its canopy shelters the entire cosmos. Eagles perch in its highest branches, a great dragon, Nidhogger, gnaws at its roots, squirrels run up and down its trunk, carrying messages between the creatures above and below. Deer graze among its branches and drink from its leaves. Yggdrasil is not merely a tree. It is the skeleton of the universe. It is the structure that holds everything together. And Asgard sits near its crown, high, elevated, radiant, but it is unmistakably part of a larger whole. It is one node in a vast interconnected network of worlds. Below it lies Midgard, the world of humans. In other directions stretched Jotunheim, the realm of giants, Niflheim, the realm of ice and cold, Muspelheim, the realm of fire, Vanaheim, home of the Vanir gods, Alfheim, realm of the elves, Svartalfheim, realm of the dwarves, and Helheim, the land of those who did not die in battle. The very fact that Asgard exists within this network tells us something essential about Norse power. The Aesir gods, Odin, Thor, Frigg, Balder, Heimdall, Tyr, Bragi, and all the rest, they are powerful, yes. They are divine, yes. But they are not the only powerful things in their cosmos. They are surrounded by other forces, other realms, other beings, who also have weight and significance. Giants are a constant presence, not merely as enemies to be defeated, but as beings with their own wisdom, their own magic, their own place in the cosmic order. Even among the gods themselves, the Aesir are not the only pantheon. The Vanir gods exist separately, and the two groups fought a war before eventually exchanging hostages and arriving at an uneasy peace. Asgard, then, is a place of power within a cosmos of competing powers. It is elevated, but not singular. It is magnificent, but not alone. And connecting Asgard to the human world is one of the most beautiful images in all of Norse mythology: the Bifrost, the rainbow bridge. The Bifrost shimmers with all the colors of the spectrum, burning with divine fire at its Asgard end, so that no one who should not cross it can do so without being consumed. It spans the distance between the realm of gods and the realm of humans, a glittering, improbable thread of divine engineering, beautiful and dangerous at once. Only the most powerful beings can traverse it. For ordinary mortals, it is simply inaccessible, something you can perhaps see from a distance, arching across the sky after rain, but never touch, never approach, never cross. The Rainbow Bridge is guarded by Heimdall, the watchman of the gods, who never sleeps, whose senses are so keen he can hear the grass growing and the wool growing on the backs of sheep. He stands at the Bifrost's edge with his great horn, Gjallarhorn, ready to sound the alarm if any enemy approaches Asgard. His very existence speaks to the fact that Asgard, despite its magnificence, is a place under constant threat. It must be guarded, it must be defended. Its connection to the wider world is a vulnerability as much as a bridge. Now turn your mind in another direction entirely. Think of a mountain. Not a mountain in a network of mountains, but a mountain that is simply the highest point, the singular, towering peak above everything else. A mountain that exists not as part of a web, but as a summit. That is Olympus. Mount Olympus is, of course, a real mountain, the highest in Greece, its peak called Mythicus, reaching nearly 2,918 meters above sea level. It sits on the border between Thessaly and Macedonia in northern Greece, and today it is a national park and biosphere reserve. If you have ever seen photographs of it, you will know how dramatic it looks. Its upper reaches perpetually wreathed in cloud, its slopes covered in dense forest, its silhouette commanding the surrounding plain like something that has always been there and always will be. In the Greek mythological imagination, Olympus was not merely a tall mountain. It was the axis of the divine world, the place where the 12 Olympians lived in palaces of marble and gold, where they feasted on ambrosia and drank nectar, where Zeus held court and made decrees that shaped the fate of gods and mortals alike. Ancient authors described it as existing in a kind of eternal brightness above the ordinary sky, in the pure upper air called the aether, a realm of clarity and light beyond the reach of clouds and storms. The key difference from Asgard is this: Olympus is singular. It is not one of several divine homes arranged around a cosmic tree. It is the divine home, the one place where the ruling powers of the Greek cosmos reside. Zeus controls the sky. Poseidon controls the sea. Hades controls the underworld. But all of them, in some sense, answer to a cosmos organized around Olympus as its supreme point. Where Asgard is a node in a network, Olympus is a summit. Where Asgard is connected to human experience by a bridge both beautiful and dangerous, Olympus is simply elevated, above, remote, looking down upon the world from a height that is almost incomprehensible. And this structural difference, this cosmological difference in where power lives, tells us everything about how each culture understood the nature of divine authority. The Norse cosmos is relational. Power in Asgard is power within a system of other powers, perpetually negotiated, perpetually contested. The Greek cosmos is hierarchical. Power on Olympus is power at the top of a structure, commanding, supreme, looking downward at what it rules. Both are extraordinary visions. Both have things to teach us, and we are only just beginning. It is also worth pausing on what these two structures, the network and the summit, suggest about the experience of belonging. In a network, belonging is lateral as much as it is vertical. You are connected to many things, not just to the thing above you. The Norse cosmos, with its 9 realms arranged around Yggdrasil, is a world in which every part is in relationship with every other part. Humans in Midgard feel the presence of Asgard above them, but also the rumble of Jotunheim at the edges, the cold emanation of Niflheim somewhere deep below, the heat of Muspelheim at the world's margin. They are embedded in a rich, complex, sometimes threatening, always alive web of cosmic relationship. In a hierarchy, belonging is primarily vertical. You are either above or below, and your identity is shaped significantly by where in the structure you sit. The Greek cosmos, organized around the summit of Olympus, is a world in which the primary question about any being is, where do you stand in relation to the gods above you? Mortals look upward. Heroes aspire upward. The divine order radiates downward from its peak. Neither of these models is purely better for human beings. The network gives you richness and complexity, a sense of being part of something vast and interconnected. The hierarchy gives you clarity, a sense of knowing your place and what is expected of you, and the possibility, however remote, of ascending. Most of us, in our actual lives, experience something of both. We are embedded in networks of relationship, family, friendship, community, the wider world, and we are also located within hierarchies of various kinds: workplace, society, the structures of power and authority that shape our opportunities. The myths of Asgard and Olympus help us think about both experiences because they have given them cosmic expression. Chapter 3: The Origins of Divine Rule. Power does not arise from nothing. Every kingdom, every empire, every domain of authority has an origin story, a moment of founding, a crisis overcome, a victory that established the right to rule. And the origin stories of Asgard and Olympus tell us something crucially different about what each culture believed power was ultimately for. Let us begin with the Greek gods, because their story of divine power has a particular elegance, a clarity of narrative that makes it easy to follow. Before the Olympians, there were the Titans. The Titans were the elder gods, children of Uranus and Gaia, heaven and earth, and they ruled the cosmos during what the Greeks called the Golden Age. Their king was Kronos, who had overthrown his own father Uranus and now ruled the cosmos with the other Titans by his side. But Kronos had been warned by prophecy that he would in turn be overthrown by one of his own children. And so, in the way of powerful rulers who fear the future, he tried to prevent the prophecy from coming true. He swallowed each of his children as they were born. His wife, Rhea, eventually grew desperate. When Zeus was born, she hid the infant and gave Kronos a stone wrapped in swaddling clothes to swallow instead. Zeus grew up in secret, eventually returned, forced Kronos to regurgitate his siblings, and then led a great war against the Titans, the Titanomachy. The Titanomachy lasted, according to various accounts, 10 years. It was a war of cosmic proportions, reshaping the universe itself. The Olympians were aided by the Cyclopes, who forged Zeus's thunderbolt, Poseidon's trident, and Hades' helm of invisibility. Eventually, the Titans were defeated and cast into Tartarus, the deepest pit of the underworld, and Olympus became the seat of the new divine order. This origin story is a story about replacement, about the old giving way to the new, about power being decisively won in open conflict and then consolidated into something that is meant to last. The Titanomachy is explicitly a foundation myth. After it, the Olympians divide the cosmos among themselves. Zeus takes the sky, Poseidon takes the sea, Hades takes the underworld. The earth is shared among all. The hierarchy is established. The regime is in place. And crucially, the regime is framed as stable. There is no equivalent in core Greek mythology to Ragnarök, no prophecy that says this arrangement will inevitably end in catastrophe. Yes, Zeus is occasionally challenged. Giants try to storm Olympus. Various monsters must be defeated. There are internal conflicts among the gods. But none of these challenges fundamentally threaten the order that was established after the Titanomachy. Olympus endures. The rule of the 12 Olympians continues. Power on Olympus, then, was power that was won and then established as permanent. It was the culmination of a struggle, the triumphant conclusion of a cosmic battle. After the victory, the question was not whether the order would survive, but simply how it would be maintained. Now turn to Asgard and to a very different origin story, one that is less about decisive victory and more about ongoing negotiation with a cosmos that does not fully cooperate. The Norse cosmological story begins with the void, Ginnungagap, the great emptiness before creation. Into this void crept fire from Muspelheim in the south and ice from Niflheim in the north. Where they met, they created the first being, Ymir, a primordial giant. From Ymir's sleeping body, more giants emerged. A primordial cow, Audumbla, licked a block of salt ice and eventually revealed Buri, the ancestor of the gods. Buri's grandson was Odin. Odin and his brothers Vili and Ve slew Ymir, an act of primordial violence that is also an act of creation. From Ymir's body they fashioned the world. His flesh became the earth, his blood the seas, his bones the mountains, his skull the sky. The gods did not defeat a rival dynasty to establish their rule. They literally built the cosmos out of a body. But here is what is different from the Greek story. This creation did not establish permanent, unchallenged dominion. The giants, the Jotnar, who are Ymir's descendants, continue to exist. They continue to be a threat. The cosmos that Odin and the Aesir rule is a cosmos that is perpetually contested, perpetually under pressure. The walls of Asgard were built partly to defend against the giants. The gods' entire culture of strength and preparation is oriented around the reality that their world is not secure. And woven into this cosmos is the great, inescapable prophecy, Ragnarök. Ragnarök is the twilight of the gods, the final battle at the end of time in which Asgard will fall. Most of the gods will die, and the cosmos itself will be destroyed and remade. Odin knows it is coming. Thor knows it is coming. The Norns, the three weavers of fate at the Well of Erd, who correspond loosely to the Greek Moirai, have woven it into the fabric of existence itself. It cannot be prevented. It can only be delayed, prepared for, met with courage. Power in Asgard, then, was never power that was secured and settled. It was power maintained in the face of an ongoing cosmic struggle. It was power that had to be actively defended, actively renewed, actively earned again and again through the deeds of the gods and the heroes who served them. The origin of divine rule in the Norse tradition is not a story about arriving at stability. It is a story about finding nobility within instability. This is, perhaps, one of the most profound differences between the two traditions. The Greeks asked, how do the powerful establish and maintain their legitimate authority? The Norse asked, how do the courageous hold the line against entropy, knowing they will ultimately lose? Both questions are deeply human. Both speak to experiences we recognize, and both shape everything about how the gods of each tradition behave. Chapter 4. Odin versus Zeus, two rulers. At the center of every pantheon is its chief deity, the being who sits at the apex of divine power, who defines the character of the whole divine order, who embodies in their own person everything that culture most values about leadership and strength. For Asgard, that being is Odin. For Olympus, it is Zeus. And comparing them is like comparing two entirely different philosophies of what a ruler should be. Let us start with Odin. Odin is one of the most complex figures in all of world mythology. He is called the All-Father, a title that carries both affection and terror, because Odin is not a straightforwardly benevolent patriarch. He is wise, yes. He is powerful, yes. But he is also cunning, calculating, and sometimes ruthless in pursuit of knowledge and advantage. He is a wanderer, a shapeshifter, a master of Seder, the form of Norse magic associated with prophecy, fate, and the manipulation of destiny. He rides through the world on Sleipnir, his 8-legged horse, accompanied by his 2 ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory, who fly across the 9 realms every day and return to whisper what they have seen into his ears. But what defines Odin more than anything else is his relationship to wisdom, specifically his willingness to sacrifice almost anything to obtain it. The most famous of these sacrifices is the loss of his eye. In one of the most extraordinary stories in all of Norse mythology, Odin came to the Well of Mimir, a well that sat beneath one of Yggdrasil's roots and contained the water of cosmic wisdom. The giant Mimir, who guarded the well, demanded a price for a single drink. Odin agreed to give one of his eyes. He plucked it out and dropped it into the water. And in exchange, he gained the wisdom to see patterns and meanings that no other being could perceive, to understand the underlying structure of fate itself. That is a staggering act. The king of the gods sacrificing his eye not for victory in battle, not for territorial expansion, not for revenge, but for knowledge, for wisdom, for the ability to understand. The second great sacrifice is even more dramatic. Odin hung himself from Yggdrasil. He hung there for 9 days and 9 nights, wounded by a spear, peering down into the darkness below the world tree, refusing food and water. And at the end of this ordeal, this voluntary death and resurrection, he saw the runes, the symbols of cosmic power, the alphabet that was also a magical system, the letters that were also forces. He discovered something that gave him, and the beings who learned from him, access to a kind of encoded wisdom about the nature of the world. Odin's rulership of Asgard is not built on raw strength, though he has plenty of that. It is built on knowing, on gathering information from every possible source, on working through indirect channels, through disguise, through manipulation, through the patient accumulation of insight. He is not a king who rules by showing up and demanding obedience. He is a king who rules by understanding the situation more deeply than anyone else, by positioning himself to influence events before others have even recognized that events are unfolding. He can be unsettling. In the myths, he sometimes seems almost to exploit the heroes and warriors he favors, choosing them for Valhalla, not simply out of appreciation for their courage, but because he is building an army for Ragnarök. He sees several moves ahead in a cosmic chess game. He is fond of disguise, of testing people without announcing himself, of revealing himself only when the lesson has already been learned. His power is the power of the knower, of the one who understands, of the one who is willing to pay any price for wisdom, because wisdom, in the Norse worldview, is ultimately the only meaningful currency. Now turn to Zeus. Zeus is also a complex figure, but his complexity is of a very different kind. Where Odin's depths are philosophical, hidden in sacrifice and arcane knowledge, Zeus's complexity is more human, more recognizable, more political. He is a king in the most direct and immediate sense of that word. He presides over Olympus as a sovereign, judging disputes, issuing decrees, wielding his thunderbolt as the physical expression of his supreme authority. He is, as the ancient sources say again and again, the father of gods and men, not in a mystical all-father sense, but literally as the one who establishes the rules and expects them to be followed. Zeus's power is rooted in physical dominance. The thunderbolt, forged for him by the Cyclopes, hurled by his own hand, capable of reducing mountains to rubble and mortals to ash, is the symbol of his authority. It is not a subtle symbol. It does not speak of patience or sacrifice or the long accumulation of wisdom. It speaks of immediate, decisive, overwhelming force. When Zeus decides something is going to happen, the primary mechanism of his decision is power. But Zeus is also a judicial figure. He presides over a kind of divine court on Olympus, where disputes among the gods are heard and settled. He makes treaties, enforces oaths, and maintains, at least in principle, a system of cosmic justice. He is the guardian of Xenia, the sacred Greek concept of hospitality and guest friendship, and those who violate it do so at enormous personal risk. In this sense, he is the embodiment of law and order, not just the strongest being in the cosmos, but the one whose strength has been institutionalized into something resembling a legitimate political structure. His weaknesses are well documented. He is frequently unfaithful to Hera, which generates enormous domestic conflict on Olympus and ripples outward into the world of mortals. He can be manipulated by desire, by pride, by the opinions of the other gods. He is not omniscient. He can be deceived, surprised, outmaneuvered. His fate is also, in some traditions, a constraint on him. The Moirai, the three fates, spin and cut the threads of destiny, and even Zeus must ultimately respect what they have determined, though he often chafes against this. But compared to Odin, Zeus rules in a way that is relatively direct and transparent. His authority is visible, expressed in dramatic acts of power, backed by the symbolic weight of the thunderbolt and the institutional weight of Olympus as the cosmic seat of government. When we compare these two rulers, we are really comparing two models of leadership. Odin represents leadership through wisdom and sacrifice. The idea that the greatest power is understanding, and that understanding costs something. Zeus represents leadership through authority and presence, the idea that power is most effective when it is clear, visible, and backed by the capacity for decisive force. Both models have their appeal. Both have their limitations. And both, perhaps, point to something real about the varieties of human leadership that have always existed. A wise leader who understands the system but works through indirect channels can accomplish things a direct ruler never could, but may also lose the loyalty of those who need clarity and presence. A visible, forceful ruler who commands by presence and authority can maintain order and inspire confidence. but may miss the subtle currents of change until it is too late. Odin knows Ragnarök is coming and plans for it, sacrificing for knowledge that might delay or shape it. Zeus presides over Olympus and enforces order, trusting that the strength of his rule will be enough to maintain it. Which approach is wiser? Which is stronger? We will return to this question. For now, let us simply sit with both of them. Two portraits of the divine king, each magnificent, each flawed, each telling us something true about the nature of power. It is worth noting too that both of these rulers are, in their own ways, lonely figures. The loneliness of Odin is perhaps more obvious. He wanders the earth in disguise. He speaks to ravens. He sits on his high throne Lidskjalf and sees all the world spread below him. And yet he is separated from everyone by the weight of what he knows. The knowledge that he sacrificed so much to acquire is also the knowledge that isolates him. He knows too much. He sees too far. The cost of understanding everything is that you cannot quite be with anyone. The loneliness of Zeus is less remarked upon, but equally real. He is the king, the father, the judge, and in that role he is always slightly apart from the rest of the divine council. They argue and lobby and form alliances around him. They try to influence him, to manipulate him, to get what they want. Even Hera, his wife, is more often a political adversary than a genuine companion. The summit of power is, as it turns out, not a very comfortable place to live. Both of these lonely kings are figures that human beings have recognized in their leaders throughout history. The solitary wise person who knows too much to be entirely at ease in company, and the powerful authority figure whose position makes genuine intimacy almost impossible. Both archetypes speak to something real, and both suggest that power, even divine power, carries a cost that is not always visible from the outside. Chapter 5. How power is organized. We have looked at where power lives and at the two chief rulers who preside over it. Now let us look at how power is distributed, how each pantheon organizes the divine authority that exists beneath its king. Because a ruler does not govern alone. Even the most powerful king needs lieutenants, ministers, guardians, specialists. And the way a ruler distributes power among those beneath them tells us a great deal about the kind of ruler they are and the kind of society they envision. In Asgard, power is distributed in a way that is perhaps best described as federated. The halls of Asgard are multiple. They are semi-independent. Each major god in the Norse pantheon has their own domain, their own hall, their own sphere of authority, and within that sphere, their power is genuine and substantial, not merely derivative of Odin's authority. Thor lives in Thrudheim, Thunder World, in his hall Bilskirnir, which is described in some sources as the largest hall ever built. He is the defender of gods and humans alike, the wielder of Mjolnir, the hammer that has become perhaps the single most recognizable symbol in Norse mythology. Thor's power is not merely delegated by Odin, it is his own, rooted in his own tremendous strength and in his own particular relationship to thunder, storms, and the protection of the cosmic order. Balder, the radiant beloved son of Odin and Frigg, dwells in Breidablik, his hall so pure that nothing impure can exist within it. His power is not military or political, but moral. He embodies beauty and goodness so completely that everything in creation made a vow not to harm him, or almost everything. And we know how that story ends. Heimdall stands at the Bifrost Bridge with his own extraordinary powers of perception and his great horn, Tyr governs the arena of law and battle courage, having demonstrated his commitment to both by allowing Fenrir to bite off his hand. Bragi is the god of poetry, eloquence, and the arts of language, a reminder that in the Norse tradition, the power of words and stories is a divine domain equal in dignity to the power of the sword. Idun keeps the apples of youth, making her arguably the most indispensable member of the entire pantheon, since without her, the gods themselves age and weaken. And then there is Loki, who is a topic unto himself, and who embodies everything complicated and ambiguous about the distribution of power in Asgard. Loki is a shapeshifter, a trickster, nominally among the Aesir though of giant heritage, sometimes the gods' greatest ally, and sometimes their most dangerous liability. He is what happens when power exists outside clear hierarchy, unpredictable, useful, and dangerous in equal measure. What this tells us about Asgard's power structure is that it is genuinely distributed. Odin is first among the Aesir, but the other gods are not merely servants. They have their own strength, their own halls, their own devoted followings, their own areas of cosmological responsibility. Asgard functions less like an absolute monarchy and more like something resembling a federation of powerful lords who acknowledge a high king. This makes the system vibrant, rich, and complex, but also potentially unstable. When Loki betrays the gods' trust, he does so from within. The threats to Asgard come not only from outside, from giants and monsters, but from the very structure of its distributed power, which leaves room for disagreement, deception, and defection. Olympus, by contrast, operates very differently. The 12 Olympians, Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Demeter, Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Ares, Aphrodite, Hephaestus, Hermes, and Hestia, or Dionysus depending on the tradition, form a court that is fundamentally organized around Zeus as its unquestioned head. The other gods have their own domains. Poseidon controls the sea, Demeter controls agriculture, Athena governs wisdom and strategy, Apollo presides over light and prophecy, and so on. Each of these domains is genuine. Poseidon can raise storms and earthquakes independently of Zeus's will. Athena can grant or withhold strategic wisdom as she chooses. But the overall structure is more clearly hierarchical. When disputes arise among the Olympians, they are ultimately resolved by Zeus, or at least in Zeus's court. The other gods may argue, may lobby, may act on their own initiative, and in the myths they frequently do, backing different sides in the Trojan War with passionate partisanship. But there is an understood hierarchy, a clear chain of divine authority that leads back to Zeus and Olympus. Each Olympian also has their own palace on Olympus itself, richly built, individually magnificent, but they all share the same mountain. They are not distributed across separate realms in the way that the Norse gods occupy separate halls in the different parts of Asgard. They are gathered together, a court, a council, a community of power organized around a single axis. Zeus convenes them regularly, calling all the gods to the great council chamber near Olympus's summit to debate and decide matters of divine and mortal significance. This image, the gathering of all the gods at a single table, at a single place, under a single authority, speaks to a fundamentally different vision of how power should be organized. Where Asgard says, each great power has its own domain, and together we form something greater than any one of us. Olympus says, there is a center, a court, a king, and within that structure, each of you has your place. Both systems produce rich, complex pantheons. Both produce gods who are vivid, three-dimensional, surprising. But the Norse system generates a kind of heroic equality, among the powerful, a fellowship of the strong, while the Greek system generates something more resembling a divine city-state with all the politics, negotiations, and personal rivalries that implies. Fascinatingly, both systems also contain the seeds of their own vulnerabilities. Asgard's distributed power makes it resilient in some ways. The Norse gods are collectively difficult to overwhelm, but it also means that internal betrayal can be uniquely devastating. Olympus's unified structure gives Zeus's court stability and coherence, but it also means that internal conflict, of which there is enormous amounts, plays out in ways that affect the entire cosmos. Chapter 6: Fate versus Control. Here we arrive at one of the deepest and most philosophically rich differences between the Norse and Greek traditions: the question of fate. What is the relationship between divine power and the fabric of destiny? Can the gods change what is fated to happen, or are they like mortals, ultimately subject to forces greater than themselves? Both traditions have a group of beings specifically responsible for fate. In the Greek tradition, they are the Moirai, the three fates: Clotho, who spins the thread of life; Lachesis, who measures it; and Atropos, who cuts it. In the Norse tradition, they are the Norns, Urd, Verdandi, and Skuld, who dwell at the well of Urd beneath Yggdrasil's roots and weave the web of fate, carving the destinies of all beings into the wood of the world tree itself. But the relationship between these fate weavers and the chief gods they serve is profoundly different in each tradition. In the Greek tradition, Zeus is constrained by fate, but not entirely. In many myths, Zeus appears to have at least some capacity to modify fate, to intervene in what has been decreed, to save a mortal who was supposed to die. The Moirai are powerful, yes, sometimes described as standing above even the gods, but Zeus's relationship to them is often ambiguous, and in practice, many Greek myths show the gods acting in ways that seem to override or sidestep fate when it suits them. The Iliad has a famous scene where Zeus considers saving his mortal son Sarpedon from death, and is only talked out of it by the warning that if he does, it will set a dangerous precedent. The implication is that Zeus could intervene. He has the power to do so, but chooses not to out of respect for the cosmic order. This is different from saying he cannot. In the Norse tradition, the relationship between the gods and fate is much starker. The Norns do not merely record fate, they determine it. And the fate they have determined for the gods is irreversible. Ragnarök is not a possibility, it is a certainty. Odin knows this. He cannot prevent it. He can prepare for it, delay it, gather more warriors, accumulate more wisdom, but the outcome is fixed. This is a remarkable thing to contemplate. The most powerful beings in the Norse cosmos, the Allfather himself, the god of thunder, the radiant Balder, the watchful Heimdall, all of them live under the shadow of a specific, detailed prophecy about how they will die. Odin will be swallowed by the great wolf Fenrir. Thor will slay the Midgard serpent, Jormungandr, and then die from its poison. Tyr and the hound Garm will slay each other. Heimdall and Loki will kill each other. The fire giant Surtur will emerge from Muspelheim and burn the world. The gods know all of this. They have known it for a very long time. And still they feast, still they fight, still they build their halls and train their warriors and defend the realms under their protection. Still they sing and create and love. There is something in this knowledge and this persistence, this refusal to collapse under the weight of inevitable doom. That is one of the most moving things in all of Norse mythology. Because what Ragnarök ultimately says is not that the gods are weak. It says that even the greatest power in the cosmos cannot escape the nature of time and change and ending. And the response of the Norse gods to this truth is not despair. It is defiance. A fierce, loving, fierce-hearted engagement with life precisely because they know it is temporary. In contrast, the Greek gods operate in a cosmos where the ending is not predetermined. Yes, fate exists. Yes, the Moirai are real and powerful. But the overall arc of Greek mythology is not toward a great final battle after which everything is destroyed. It is toward the continued maintenance of a cosmic order that the Olympians won through the Titanomachy and intend to preserve indefinitely. This creates a very different psychological atmosphere in each tradition. Greek myths are often about the tension between divine will and fate in specific situations. Can Achilles avoid dying young? Can Oedipus escape the prophecy about his parents? These are contests between individual destinies and individual choices. The overall structure of the cosmos, the survival of Olympus itself, is not in question. Norse myths are about something different. How do you live with nobility and purpose in a world where the ending is already written? How do you hold fast to courage and loyalty and craft when you know that in the end the fire will come? Both of these are genuine and important questions, and both mythological traditions offer wisdom in response to them. Wisdom that has resonated with human beings across thousands of years, precisely because these are questions we all face in our own small individual lives, even if not on a cosmic scale. We do not know, most of us, exactly when and how our own stories will end, but we know they will. And the question of how to live with that knowledge, with courage, with wisdom, with love for the world as it is rather than as we wish it would be, is perhaps the oldest question human beings have ever asked. The Norse tradition's answer, embedded in the lives of the gods themselves, is something like this: live as if what you do matters, because it does. The fact that the outcome is not in your hands does not mean that your choices are meaningless. Odin sacrifices his eye not because it will save him at Ragnarök, it won't, but because wisdom has value in itself, and the search for it is worth any cost. Thor defends Midgard not because he can prevent its eventual destruction. He cannot, but because the people who live there deserve to be defended today, in this moment, by someone with the strength to do it. The Greek tradition's answer is somewhat different. Fate is real, but so is human agency. The tension between the two is not something to be resolved, but something to be navigated with intelligence and courage and a clear-eyed assessment of what you can and cannot change. Odysseus cannot change the fact that the gods have their plans, but he can be clever, patient, resourceful, and loyal. And those qualities, exercised within the constraints of fate, make all the difference. Both answers are beautiful, both are real, and both are available to us in the quiet hours when we are honest with ourselves about the nature of the world we inhabit. Chapter 7. War versus governance. The values of a divine culture are reflected most clearly in how it prepares for and responds to conflict. War and governance, how a power defends itself and how it makes decisions, reveal the deep structure of any civilization, mortal or divine. Asgard is, at its heart, a warrior culture. This is not incidental to Norse mythology. It is central, foundational, woven into everything. The greatest hall in Asgard, the hall most often described and most deeply imagined, is Valhalla. Odin's Hall of the Slain. Valhalla is the afterlife destination of the most honored warriors, those who fell in battle, selected by the Valkyries, Odin's divine choosers of the slain, who ride across battlefields in the midst of carnage, choosing who lives and who dies based on their divine judgment. The chosen dead are brought to Valhalla, where they feast each night on the meat of Saerimnir, a boar that is slaughtered every day and yet is whole again the next morning, and drink mead that flows from the udder of the goat Hydron. Each day they fight each other in vast battles on the plain outside Valhalla, honing their skills, keeping themselves sharp. Each evening they feast together, their wounds healed, their spirits high, until the day when Ragnarök comes and they will march out to fight at Odin's side. Valhalla is essentially a training camp for the apocalypse, a gymnasium of divine warfare, a place where courage and martial excellence are cultivated and preserved across time, ready to be deployed when the final battle arrives. This tells us something very specific about how the Norse tradition understood power. Power in this tradition is ultimately military. It is the power of the warrior, not the bureaucrat, not the merchant, not the philosopher, to stand in the face of overwhelming opposition and refuse to yield. The highest honor is to die well in battle. The greatest preparation for the future is to keep fighting, even in death, even knowing the outcome. This does not mean that wisdom, poetry, law and craft are absent from Asgard. They are very much present in Odin's scholarship and Bragi's songs and the dwarves' magnificent craft. But the primary register of divine power in the Norse tradition is martial. The gods are, at their core, a warrior tribe of sky gods who have elevated the virtues of the battlefield, courage, loyalty, sacrifice, endurance, into cosmic principles. Compare this to Olympus. The Olympians certainly have war as part of their portfolio. Ares is literally the god of violent conflict, and the Trojan War is the most extended narrative in all of Greek mythology. The gods of Olympus are also not strangers to combat. But the dominant register of divine activity on Olympus is not military. It is political and legal. The image that recurs again and again in Greek mythology is not the battle line or the warrior feasting in the mead hall. It is the council chamber, the assembly of the gods, Zeus on his throne, listening to arguments from Hera, from Athena, from Poseidon, from Apollo, weighing competing claims and issuing judgment. The gods of Olympus argue. They negotiate. They form alliances, shift allegiances, lobby for their preferred outcomes. During the Trojan War, perhaps the greatest mythological conflict in the Greek tradition, the gods are not simply fighting on opposite sides. They are conducting a political drama of staggering complexity. Hera and Athena support the Greeks because of an old grievance involving Paris and a golden apple. Aphrodite supports the Trojans because Paris chose her as the most beautiful goddess. Apollo and Ares also favor Troy. Zeus attempts to remain above the fray, managing the politics of the divine council while the war below plays out according to its own logic. This political dimension, this sense that divine power is exercised through argument, judgment, alliance, and decree as much as through direct force, reflects something deep about Greek culture and its experience of civic life. The Greeks invented the polis, the city-state, and with it the culture of public debate, legal argument, and political assembly. Their gods reflect this. Olympus is a divine polis, with all the political energy that implies. Asgard reflects a different cultural experience, the experience of the Norse and Germanic peoples, for whom the great social unit was the warrior band, the jarls and their retinues, the heroic fellowship of those bound together by loyalty and shared danger. Their gods reflect this too. Odin's court is less a senate and more a war band, bound by oaths, defined by courage, prepared for battle. Neither is simply better or worse than the other. Both are reflections of genuine human experiences, genuine human values. The question is which virtues each tradition chooses to elevate to the divine, which aspects of the human experience it decides are worth building a theology around. The Norse gods say, courage in the face of overwhelming odds is divine. The Greek gods say, the capacity to govern, to argue, to establish order through law and institutions is divine. Both, perhaps, are true. And perhaps the deepest insight is this: both forms of power are necessary, and neither alone is sufficient. A warrior culture without institutions eventually consumes itself. Courage without structure, bravery without a framework of law and governance, tends toward endless conflict, the ceaseless battle that the Einherjar fight outside Valhalla every day, wounds healed each evening, only to begin again. It is magnificent as a symbol of readiness, but as a way of organizing a living society, it cannot sustain what it protects. The Norse myths know this too, which is why Odin values wisdom alongside strength, why Bragi's poetry sits alongside Thor's hammer as a divine gift, why Tyr's role as god of law is honored alongside the warrior virtues. Equally, a political culture without the capacity for courage and sacrifice eventually becomes hollow. Governance without the willingness to stand firm when the storm comes, to defend what has been built even at great personal cost, produces institutions that are impressive on calm days and crumble under pressure. The Greek gods know this too. Athena is not only a goddess of wisdom, but of strategic warfare. Apollo's healing art is inseparable from his capacity for destruction when outraged. Even the most political and legal of the Olympians has, somewhere beneath the diplomacy, a core of force that makes their authority real. The warrior and the governor, the sword and the law, the Mjolnir and the thunderbolt, each needs the other to be truly great. Chapter 8. Gods and Humans. One of the most revealing differences between any two mythological traditions is the question of access. Who can reach the divine? How does power flow between the realm of gods and the realm of mortals? And what does the answer tell us about what each culture believed about the nature of human beings and their relationship to the cosmos? In Asgard, the relationship between gods and humans is characterized by a fundamental separation that is bridged only in very specific, very meaningful ways. The Bifrost, the Rainbow Bridge, is the primary physical connection between Asgard and Midgard, the human world. It is beautiful, it is charged with divine fire, and it is explicitly not something that ordinary mortals can access. The bridge burns with a heat that would destroy any being not powerful enough to withstand it. It is guarded by Heimdall, who keeps watch for any approaching enemy. Crossing it is a privilege of the gods and of their divine messengers, and perhaps of the very great heroes who have been brought to Asgard, but not of ordinary human beings in ordinary circumstances. The most significant way that humans enter Asgard is through Valhalla, and even this is not available to everyone. Only warriors who died in battle, selected by the Valkyries, are brought to Odin's hall. The rest of the human dead go to hell, not a place of torment in the Norse understanding, but a grey, quiet realm presided over by the half-living, half-dead figure, Hel, daughter of Loki. Hell is not punishment. It is simply the default afterlife, the place you go if you did not die in battle in a way that earned divine selection. The Norse mythology also includes the Einherjar, the chosen warriors of Valhalla, but these are not gods. They are not elevated to divine status. They remain warriors, honored and powerful, preparing for the final battle, but clearly distinct from the gods themselves. In the Norse tradition, humans do not become gods. They may become legendary. They may earn a place at Odin's table, but the boundary between mortal and divine remains clear. This boundary is also reflected in the general character of how Norse gods interact with humans. Odin wanders the earth in disguise. He tests people. He offers wisdom. He sometimes gives gifts or challenges. Thor protects humanity from giants and monsters. But these are interventions from above, from a being that remains fundamentally separate from and superior to the humans it interacts with. The gods are on our side in the Norse tradition, but they are not one of us. They are other, magnificent, terrifying and generous, but other. The Greek tradition offers a striking contrast. On Olympus, the boundary between divine and mortal is famously permeable. Gods interact with humans in intimate, sometimes shockingly direct ways. They fall in love with mortals. They have children with them. They sometimes elevate mortals to semi-divine or even divine status. The hero, Heracles, born of Zeus and a mortal woman, eventually achieves apotheosis. He is raised to full divine status and takes his place on Olympus after his death. This is not unique to Heracles. Ganymede, the beautiful mortal youth, is brought to Olympus to serve as cupbearer to the gods. Psyche, after her legendary trials, is granted immortality and marries the god Eros. The boundary between gods and heroes in Greek mythology is always somewhat blurry, because the tradition explicitly acknowledges that extraordinary human beings can, under extraordinary circumstances, become something more than human. The heroes of Greek mythology, Achilles, Odysseus, Heracles, Perseus, are themselves often children of gods and mortals, existing in a hybrid category that the Norse tradition does not quite replicate. This permeability reflects something about how Greek culture thought about human potential. There is a strand of Greek thought, most fully developed later in philosophy, but present in the mythological tradition too, that suggests human beings are capable of something divine, that exceptional excellence brings a person closer to the divine nature. The gods of Olympus are not infinitely remote from human experience. They are passionate, political, petty, loving, jealous, creative, deeply recognizable in their emotional lives, even if their powers are beyond mortal reach. The Norse gods are also recognizable and three-dimensional, but they are recognizable in a different way. They are recognizable as models of what a warrior culture most admires: courage, loyalty, endurance, wisdom earned through sacrifice. They are not emotionally close to humans in the same way that Zeus, who fathers countless mortal children and involves himself intimately in their lives, is close to humans. Both models of divine-human relationship speak to genuine human needs. The Norse model offers the comfort of being watched over and protected by powers that are genuinely stronger than anything that threatens you, and the honor of being chosen, selected for something beyond ordinary human experience. The Greek model offers the possibility of participation, of elevation, of the divine recognizing exceptional humanity and drawing it upward. One says, the gods are above us, but they care about us. The other says, the gods are above us, but you might one day join them. And perhaps both of these offers speak to something essential in the human condition: the need to feel protected and the need to feel that growth is possible, that we are held, and that we can rise. It is worth noticing too what each tradition says about the value of an ordinary human life. Not the hero, not the warrior chosen for Valhalla, not the mortal raised to Olympus, but the everyday person simply trying to live well. In the Norse tradition, every human life exists within a cosmos that the gods actively defend. When Thor drives off the giants, he is protecting not just Asgard, but Midgard, the world of ordinary people. The divine effort is, at its core, an effort to preserve the conditions in which human life can unfold, with some measure of safety and meaning. There is a generosity in this, a care for the ordinary that is not about elevating anyone to divine status, but simply about protecting what already exists. In the Greek tradition, the gods' involvement in human life is often intensely personal and specific. They intervene in the lives of particular heroes, particular cities, particular families. This can feel arbitrary and even unfair, since not everyone has a divine parent or patron to advocate for them. But it also means that the Greek cosmos is one in which human achievement, at its greatest, genuinely matters to the divine. The gods watch. They care. They argue about us. We are, in some sense, the drama they cannot stop watching. Both of these are ways of saying that human life has cosmic significance, that what we do matters, not just to ourselves and each other, but in a larger sense that extends beyond any individual life. This, too, is a gift that mythology offers, and it is one of the reasons we return to these stories again and again. Chapter 9: The Strength of Asgard. We have been comparing and exploring. Now let us spend some time simply appreciating, beginning with the great strengths of Asgard and its gods. Because Asgard, for all its shadows and its looming doom, is a place of extraordinary power. And the power it embodies is of a kind that deserves to be recognized and honored. The first and perhaps greatest strength of Asgard is the one that is most counterintuitive: the courage to act in full awareness of doom. Most human beings, if they were told with certainty that their world would end, that they would personally die in a great catastrophe, and that nothing they could do would prevent it, most of us would not respond well. We might collapse into despair. We might retreat into denial. We might spend our remaining time in frantic, futile attempts to escape the inevitable, or simply in hedonistic avoidance. The gods of Asgard do none of these things. They know Ragnarök is coming. They know most of them will die, and their response is to keep building, keep training, keep gathering warriors, keep defending the realms under their protection, keep feasting and singing and creating until the very end. This is not merely courage. It is something deeper, a kind of philosophical maturity that says, the value of what we do is not dependent on its permanence. The feasts in Valhalla matter because they are good feasts shared with brave companions, not because they will last forever. The defense of Midgard matters because the humans who live there matter, not because it will ultimately be successful. The work of living and fighting and creating is its own justification, regardless of outcome. This is, in its way, one of the most sophisticated and humane insights in all of world mythology. And it is embedded in the structure of Norse cosmology, not stated explicitly as a philosophical thesis, but enacted in the lives and choices of the gods themselves. The second great strength of Asgard is its warrior culture and the loyalty it generates. The bonds between the gods of Asgard and between the gods and their chosen warriors. are bonds forged in the awareness of shared danger. When you know that the end will come and that you will face it together, the friendship and loyalty that develops has a particular depth and weight. The Einherjar in Valhalla are not simply soldiers, they are companions, brothers and sisters in arms, bound by the same values, shaped by the same culture of honorable conduct in the face of death. The Norse warrior culture, reflected in the gods, values loyalty above almost everything else. To betray a companion, to break an oath, to behave dishonorably, these are not merely tactical errors. They are moral failures of the deepest kind, and the gods embody this value. Tyr sacrificed his hand to bind Fenrir because it was necessary for the protection of the realms, and he accepted that cost without complaint. Thor throws himself into impossible battles, not for personal glory, but because his role is to protect. Even Odin's strange and sometimes unsettling choices are, at their core, oriented toward the ultimate protection of everything he loves. The third great strength of Asgard is what we might call the power of wisdom, earned through sacrifice. Odin's eye in the well, the 9 nights on Yggdrasil. These are not merely dramatic mythological episodes. They are models of a particular kind of epistemology, a theory of how true knowledge is obtained. In the Norse tradition, wisdom is not given freely. It is not simply the result of being intelligent or of having access to good information. It is earned through sacrifice, through voluntary suffering, through the willingness to give up something precious in exchange for understanding. This is a deeply resonant idea. It captures something real about the human experience of growth and learning. The deepest wisdom we carry is often the wisdom that cost us something. Wisdom learned through failure, through loss, through the painful process of being wrong and having to reconstruct our understanding. Odin's willingness to pay any price for knowledge is, in this sense, a mythological expression of the intellectual and moral courage that real learning requires. These 3 strengths, courage in the face of doom, fierce loyalty, and wisdom earned through sacrifice, form a trinity of virtues that the Norse tradition regarded as the highest form of divine power. They are not the virtues of comfort or certainty or triumph. They are the virtues of beings who have looked clearly at a difficult world and decided to love it anyway, to fight for it anyway, to understand it as deeply as they can for as long as they have. There is something in this that speaks directly to the human experience of inhabiting a body that will eventually fail, a life that will eventually end, relationships that will eventually be separated by time or death. The Norse gods did not have the luxury of pretending otherwise, and their response to this condition, not denial, not despair, but fierce, loving engagement with the world as it actually is one of the most enduring gifts their mythology offers. We speak sometimes of living in the moment, of being present, of not letting the fear of the future steal the richness of the now. The gods of Asgard, who know more precisely than we do exactly how their story ends, are masters of this quality, not because they are indifferent to the future, but because they understand that the future will take care of itself when it arrives. What matters right now is the feast, the friendship, the hammer in hand, the song rising in the hall, the work that needs to be done today. Chapter 10. The Strength of Olympus. And now let us turn to Olympus and to the remarkable strengths of the Greek divine order. The first and most obvious strength of Olympus is its stability. Where Asgard lives under the constant shadow of Ragnarök, Olympus presides over a cosmos that was established through the Titanomachy and is not scheduled to end. The Greek gods are not counting down to their own destruction. They rule from a position of relative security, and this security allows them to project their power outward in ways that shape the cosmos constructively. This stability is not simply good fortune. It was purchased at tremendous cost through the Titanomachy, and it is maintained through the ongoing exercise of divine authority. Zeus's thunderbolt is not merely a weapon, it is the symbol of an established order, of a cosmic settlement in which every major power has its domain and its place. The clarity of this hierarchy, sky, sea, underworld, each ruled by one of the three great brothers, with the other Olympians filling the remaining domains, creates a kind of cosmic efficiency. The world runs because each powerful being knows their role and exercises it. The second great strength of Olympus is its specialization, the way each god's power is focused, refined, and made extraordinarily effective within their particular domain. Poseidon does not merely have a vague connection to the sea, he commands it absolutely. Every wave, every storm, every earthquake. When he strikes his trident against the ground, the earth shakes. When he wills a storm, the Mediterranean becomes a death trap for sailors. His power within its domain is total. Athena does not merely have some wisdom, she is the personification of a particular kind of intelligence, strategic, practical, oriented toward craft and the creation of things that last. Her wisdom produced the olive tree, which became one of the foundations of Mediterranean civilization. Her wisdom guided Perseus, Heracles, Odysseus, some of the greatest heroes the tradition produced, through challenges that would have defeated less carefully guided minds. Apollo does not merely know some things about the future, he is the source of prophecy itself. His oracle at Delphi, consulted by kings and city-states across the Greek world for centuries. His healing touches disease with the possibility of recovery. His music shapes the world through beauty. This specialization means that the Olympian court collectively covers every dimension of human and cosmic life with a kind of divine competence. There is no domain that is unguarded, no aspect of existence that does not have a divine patron of tremendous power. The breadth and coherence of this coverage is one of Olympus's great practical strengths. The third strength of Olympus is perhaps its most culturally significant, its role in shaping human civilization itself. The gods of Olympus are not merely powerful beings who happen to overlap with human life. They are, in the Greek tradition, the authors and sustainers of the cultural achievements that define civilized existence. Athena gave humanity the olive and the art of weaving. Demeter gave wheat and agriculture. Hephaestus gave fire and the art of the forge. Apollo gave music and medicine and the capacity to ask meaningful questions about the future. Hermes gave commerce and communication and the art of travel. The gods of Olympus are, in this sense, the mythological explanation for how human beings came to be capable of civilization at all. They are not merely rulers or protectors. They are the sources of the gifts, the art and craft and skill that make it possible for human communities to sustain themselves, to create beauty, to communicate across distance, to heal the sick and feed the hungry. This gives Olympus a kind of moral and cultural authority that goes beyond raw power. The Greeks worshipped the Olympians not simply because they were stronger, but because the things that made human life worth living were understood as gifts from the divine. To honor Demeter was to honor the wheat that sustained you. To honor Athena was to honor the wisdom that helped your city survive its enemies. To honor Apollo was to honor the healing that saved your child from fever. This integration of divine power with the positive dimensions of human experience, agriculture, craft, wisdom, healing, art, is one of the most beautiful aspects of the Greek mythological tradition, and it is a genuine strength of Olympus as a model of divine power. There is also something worth noting about the sheer ambition of the Olympian project. The Greek gods did not merely claim authority over a few dimensions of human life. They claimed it over all of them, simultaneously, in a coherent and interconnected system. The harvest depends on Demeter, but the rain that makes the harvest possible is connected to Zeus and Poseidon. The healing of the sick depends on Apollo, but the craft of the physician, the skilled hands, the precise knowledge, owes something to Athena. The safe voyage home from war depends on Poseidon's goodwill, but the wisdom to navigate conflict and find the way home is Athena's gift. The Olympian system, at its best, is an integrated vision of the cosmos in which nothing important is left unattended. Every domain of life has its divine steward. Every form of human need has its divine source of support. This is an extraordinarily ambitious and coherent theological vision, and the fact that human beings found it compelling enough to build an entire civilization around it for centuries is itself testimony to its power. Chapter 11. The Weakness of Asgard. Every great power has its shadow, and the gods of Asgard, for all their courage and wisdom and warrior nobility, carry within them the seeds of their own undoing. The most fundamental weakness of Asgard is the most obvious one: Ragnarök. We have discussed this already, but it is worth sitting with the full weight of it. The gods know with certainty that their world will end. They know how it will happen, and they know that they cannot prevent it. This is not a small burden. It is the defining condition of their existence. Every feast, every battle, every act of wisdom or creation occurs under this shadow. And the shadow is cast not only into the future, it reaches back and shapes the present in ways that are sometimes deeply tragic. The death of Balder is perhaps the most heartbreaking episode in all of Norse mythology, precisely because it is the first concrete step toward Ragnarök, the moment when the doom begins to become real rather than merely prophesied. Balder, the most beloved of the gods, the embodiment of light and purity and joy, the god whom everything in creation loved, died because of a mistletoe dart thrown by his blind brother Hoder, guided by Loki's malicious hand. Everything in the world had made a vow not to harm Balder. Everything except mistletoe, which seemed too young and too insignificant to bother with. Loki found this exception. He exploited it. And with Balder's death, something irreplaceable was lost from Asgard, a light that could not be rekindled until after Ragnarök, when the world was made new. This is the second great weakness of Asgard, the threat that comes from within. The external enemies, giants, monsters, the forces of chaos, are formidable but comprehensible. They can be fought. But the internal threats are more insidious. Loki is the clearest example. He is among the Aesir in many accounts, or at least is counted as their companion and ally. And yet the catastrophes he brings about come from precisely this insider position. He knows the gods' vulnerabilities. He has their trust. He uses both against them. The binding of Loki, which follows his role in Balder's death, is one of the most terrible scenes in Norse mythology. And yet, even bound, Loki's eventual escape is fated to occur, and when it does, Ragnarök will begin in earnest. But Loki is not the only internal threat. The monstrous children he has fathered, Fenrir, the great wolf, Jormungandr, the Midgard serpent, Hel, the ruler of the dead, are woven into the very fabric of the Norse cosmos. They cannot simply be eliminated. Fenrir is bound with the magical chain Gleipnir, forged by dwarves from impossible materials. The sound of a cat's footfall, the beard of a woman, the roots of a mountain, the sinews of a bear, the breath of a fish, the spittle of a bird. But the binding will not hold forever. These beings are already inside the system. They cannot be expelled. This is the deepest weakness in Asgard's structure, the impossibility of perfectly separating order from chaos, friend from enemy, inside from outside. In a distributed, federated power structure, where even the divine family includes figures of ambiguous loyalty, the seeds of catastrophe are always present. The third weakness of Asgard is the very quality we identified as one of its strengths. The warrior culture that makes it magnificent also makes it inflexible in certain ways. A culture that glorifies battle and honorable death is one that sometimes tends toward confrontational choices that accelerate conflict rather than manage it. The Norse gods, for all Odin's cunning, are often in the position of managing crises rather than preventing them, because their deepest instincts are toward engagement, toward meeting challenges directly, toward the bold and the fierce rather than the patient and the diplomatic. These weaknesses do not diminish the greatness of Asgard. If anything, they make it more affecting, more human, more real. A power that struggles, that has genuine vulnerabilities, that carries the weight of its own doom with such grace, is a power that moves us in ways that perfect, invulnerable power never could. Chapter 12. The Weakness of Olympus. And now let us look honestly at the weaknesses of Olympus, because for all its stability, its specialization, and its cultural magnificence, the divine court of the Greek gods is far from perfect. The first and most immediately obvious weakness of the Olympians is their extraordinary human-like flaws. The gods of Olympus are immortal and tremendously powerful, but they are also jealous, petty, vindictive, lustful, proud, and capable of truly shocking cruelty when their honor is wounded or their desires thwarted. This is not incidental to the Greek tradition. It is central to it. The myths celebrate the gods' powers and domains, but they also take a certain sharp, clear-eyed view of their moral limitations. Zeus, the king of the gods, the upholder of justice, is notoriously unfaithful, conducting affairs with mortal women and goddesses alike. His wife, Hera's jealous rage in response to these affairs generates one of the great recurring dramatic engines of Greek mythology, the suffering of those Zeus loves, pursued by a queen who cannot punish her husband directly, but can punish everything connected to him. Poseidon's pride leads him to flood entire regions when his honor is wounded. Apollo sends plague upon the Greek camp at Troy because Agamemnon insulted his priest. Aphrodite's wounded pride at not being chosen most beautiful in the judgment of Paris sets off the entire chain of events that leads to the Trojan War. Ares, the god of war, is often portrayed as not particularly intelligent, brave and ferocious, but prone to acting from pure aggression rather than strategic thought. The gods of Olympus, in other words, act a great deal like extremely powerful human beings with all of humanity's attendant emotional complexity. Their capacity for harm to mortals and to each other is almost limitless, and their motivations for causing that harm are often remarkably petty. Wounded pride, sexual jealousy, competitive resentment, the desire to be acknowledged as more important than a rival. This is the second weakness of Olympus, the internal conflict and rivalry that constantly threatens the unity of the divine court. The Trojan War is the great example. For 10 years, the most consequential conflict in Greek mythology, the gods of Olympus were divided against each other. Hera and Athena on one side, Aphrodite and Ares on the other, Zeus attempting to manage the chaos from above. The war among the gods mirrors and magnifies the war among the humans below. And it is impossible to disentangle the two. Divine politics and mortal politics are inextricably linked, and the result is 10 years of devastation for both. But the Trojan War is only the most extended example. Throughout Greek mythology, the gods are constantly at odds with each other, competing for territory, for worship, for the favor of particular cities, for precedence in the divine hierarchy. Athena and Poseidon competed for patronage of Athens in a contest that Zeus had to adjudicate. The divine court of Olympus is a place of constant political maneuvering, alliance building, and interpersonal conflict that would be exhausting to navigate, even if the consequences weren't so frequently catastrophic for the mortals caught in the crossfire. The third weakness of Olympus is subtler, but perhaps more philosophically significant: the limitation of even divine perfection. The Olympians are not all-knowing. They can be deceived. Hephaestus famously trapped Ares and Aphrodite in a divine net and summoned all the gods to witness their shame, and Zeus himself has been fooled on multiple occasions. They are not entirely omnipotent. In several traditions, fate or the Moirai stand above even Zeus, and there are things the gods cannot do or choose not to attempt because they understand the limits of their authority. And they are not morally perfect. As we have seen, their emotional lives lead them into actions that are unjust, destructive, and sometimes cruel, in ways that sit uncomfortably with their role as upholders of cosmic order. This gap between the authority the gods of Olympus claim as enforcers of justice, as guarantors of cosmic order, and the behavior they actually exhibit is one of the most interesting tensions in all of Greek mythology. The tradition is remarkably honest about this gap. It does not pretend the gods are morally perfect. It shows them as they are: powerful, complex, sometimes magnificent, sometimes appalling, always vivid. And perhaps this honesty is itself a kind of strength, a recognition that power and moral perfection do not necessarily travel together, and that the cosmic order is maintained not by the goodness of those at the top of the hierarchy, but by the overall structure of the system, the distribution of domains, the checks and balances of divine politics. Chapter 13. The Psychology of Power. We have traveled a long way together now. We have moved through 9 realms and the heights of Olympus, through creation myths and warrior halls, through fate and governance, and the luminous, flawed lives of beings that human imagination has been sustaining for thousands of years. Before we reach our final reflection, let us sit for a moment with what all of this might mean, not as mythology, not as history, but as psychology, as a map of the inner life. Because the deepest reason that mythologies endure is not that they tell us about the ancient world. It is that they tell us about ourselves. The gods of Asgard and the gods of Olympus have been in continuous conversation with human experience for millennia, because what they embody, the questions they pose, the values they dramatize, the tensions they bring to life, are questions and values and tensions that live inside us. Consider the central psychological contrast we have been exploring all evening. The Norse tradition, through Asgard, offers us the archetype of endurance, of finding meaning within limitation, of acting with full commitment in a situation where the outcome is not in our hands. This is not a psychology of victory. It is a psychology of dignity in the face of whatever comes. The All-Father knows he will lose. He sacrifices his eye anyway. He hangs on the world tree anyway. He gathers his warriors anyway. Because the quality of how you live is not determined by whether you win. This is deeply resonant because most of us at various points in our lives face situations where we cannot win, where the outcome is not something we control. Illness, loss, the ending of things we love, the certainty of our own mortality. The Norse mythological tradition does not look away from these realities. It walks directly toward them, and it says, "Here is how you do it with grace." The Greek tradition, through Olympus, offers something different, the archetype of authority earned through excellence. Zeus did not inherit his throne. He won it through a decade of war against the Titans, through cunning and alliance, and ultimately through the sheer force of the thunderbolt. The Olympians presided over a world that they had shaped, in which their specialized powers were the foundation of human flourishing. They were not merely rulers. They were, in some sense, the explanations for why things worked at all. This is also deeply resonant, because many of us aspire to something like this: to develop a particular excellence, a domain of genuine competence, and to put it at the service of something larger than ourselves. The specialization of the Olympians, their focused and refined divine powers, speaks to the human aspiration to be truly good at something that matters. But the weaknesses of each tradition are also psychologically illuminating. Asgard's great vulnerability, the internal threat, the enemy within, the Loki, who knows all the secrets and exploits all the weaknesses, reminds us that our most dangerous adversaries are often not external. They are the parts of ourselves or of our communities that carry the seeds of destruction within the structure of who we are, the shadow that lives inside the system, the thing we have been unable or unwilling to address until the cost has become catastrophic. Olympus's great vulnerability, the human-like flaws, the jealousy and pride and emotional reactivity that lead the most powerful beings in the cosmos to make devastating decisions for petty reasons, reminds us that power does not confer wisdom, that those who sit at the summit are not exempt from the ordinary failures of the human heart, and that the most elaborate structures of authority can be undermined by the small, hot, personal fires of wounded pride and unsatisfied desire. Endurance versus dominance, wisdom versus authority, fate accepted versus fate defied. These are not just ancient mythological tensions. They are living psychological archetypes, ways of being in the world that each of us, in our own small way, navigates every day. The person who keeps showing up at work, at family, at friendship, knowing that the outcome is uncertain, that loss is possible, that the end will come someday. That person is living something of Asgard's truth. The person who has spent years developing genuine expertise, who has earned the authority to lead through demonstrated excellence in a specific domain. That person is living something of Olympus's truth. Most of us, most of the time, are living both. Enduring and striving, accepting and asserting, finding meaning in what we do even when we cannot control the outcome, and also working to become genuinely good at the things we care about, to earn the right to make a difference. The myths of Asgard and Olympus have been speaking to human beings in this condition. the condition of being simultaneously limited and aspiring, mortal and creative, subject to forces we cannot control and capable of extraordinary things within that constraint for thousands of years. And they continue to speak. That is perhaps the most extraordinary power of all. Let us take a moment to breathe with that thought. The stories of Asgard and Olympus have survived the fall of the civilizations that created them. The Viking Age ended. Classical Greece was conquered, absorbed, transformed. The temples fell. The sacrifices stopped. The priests moved on to other roles, other faiths, other ways of understanding the divine. And yet Odin is still here. Zeus is still here. Thor still wields his hammer in our films and our novels and our games and our dreams. Athena still lends her name to the city of Athens, to universities and libraries, and the symbols of wisdom carved above the doors of institutions that may not even remember where the image came from. Apollo still gives his name to space missions, to healing centers, to the idea of a certain kind of cool, rational solar brilliance. Hermes is still the god of messengers and travelers, his caduceus still the symbol of medicine, his winged sandals still conjuring the image of swift, clever communication. Why? Why do these stories last? Part of the answer is literary. The Iliad and the Odyssey are simply extraordinary works of art, and they have transmitted their gods to every generation that has encountered them. The Norse myths, preserved in Iceland in the 12th and 13th centuries, have a wild, strange, poetic beauty that no amount of time seems to diminish. But literature alone doesn't explain it. Plenty of great literature is forgotten. The myths of Asgard and Olympus endure because they do what the best mythology has always done. They give us a way of thinking about the things that matter most in a form that is beautiful and memorable and alive. They give us images for the big questions. What does it look like to rule wisely? What does it look like to sacrifice for understanding? What does it look like to face the inevitable with grace? What does it look like to let jealousy and pride corrode even the most powerful relationships? These are not abstract philosophical questions. In the myths, they have faces and voices and stories, and that makes them available to us in a way that a treatise on ethics never quite can be. The Norse and Greek gods are, in this sense, still working, still doing what they were always doing, helping human beings think, feel, and imagine their way through the great challenges of being alive. Chapter 14, Final Reflection. Which power endures? We began this evening with a question. What is true power? We have traveled a long way in search of an answer, through the halls of Asgard and the palaces of Olympus, through origin stories and warrior cultures, through fate and governance, and the gloriously complex inner lives of beings that human imagination has been dreaming about since before recorded history. And I think we have found that there is no single answer, that the question itself, asked in good faith, opens out into something richer and more nuanced than any simple response could capture. Asgard tells us that true power is the power of endurance, of commitment that does not require the guarantee of success, of wisdom pursued at great cost because understanding is worth the price, of loyalty to companions in the face of shared danger, of courage that is more beautiful precisely because it is courage in full awareness of doom. This is a power that does not look triumphant in the conventional sense. The gods of Asgard will lose their final battle, And yet something survives. In the Norse tradition, after Ragnarök, the world is remade. The earth rises again from the sea. Surviving gods reunite. Some of the dead return. The cycle begins again. The power of Asgard, then, is ultimately the power of regeneration, of something that cannot be finally destroyed, because it is not invested in any particular moment of triumph, but in the ongoing commitment to meet the world as it is. Olympus tells us that true power is the power of establishment, of winning the right to rule through genuine excellence and holding it through the coherent distribution of authority across every domain of life, of developing specialized divine competence that genuinely serves the flourishing of the world, of providing stable, structured divine governance in a cosmos that needs it, of shaping and sustaining the cultural achievements, agriculture, craft, healing, wisdom, art, that make human civilization possible. The power of Olympus is the power of institution, of creating structures of authority and care that outlast any individual act or moment, that become woven into the fabric of how the world works. Which is greater? Which endures? Perhaps the truest answer is that they need each other. A power that can only endure but cannot establish or create. That is courage without architecture, bravery without a home to return to, and a power that can only establish and maintain but cannot endure the unexpected, the catastrophic, the thing that arrives without warning from within or without. That is an institution without the roots to survive the great storms that come to all things eventually. The deepest wisdom might be something like this: build like Olympus, but endure like Asgard. Seek to create structures of genuine excellence and care that can serve the world across time. And when those structures are threatened, as they will be, as all things are, meet the threat with the Norse god's fierce, graceful, eyes-open refusal to yield. Sacrifice, if necessary, for understanding. Stand guard, like Heimdall, for what you love. Feast with your companions while you can. Keep your hammer ready. And know that whatever comes, whatever storms, whatever dooms, whatever ends and beginnings, the question itself endures. The human capacity to imagine these realms, to people them with gods of such complexity and beauty, to sit with the questions they raise about power and wisdom and fate and loyalty and the nature of the good life. That capacity is itself a kind of power. It is the power that brought us here tonight. It is the power that has kept these stories alive across centuries and cultures. It is the power not of the thunderbolt or the rainbow bridge or the feasting hall or the marble palace, but of the human mind reaching towards something larger than itself and finding in the reaching something genuinely magnificent. Asgard and Olympus are still there, in the way that all great human creations are still there, not in the sky or on a mountaintop, but in the part of us that responds to beauty and meaning and the honest facing of difficult questions. They have not been destroyed. They have been transformed, as myths always are, by the living attention of each generation that encounters them. And they will continue to be transformed long after all of us have had our rest. For now, though, let us rest. Let the music carry you. Let the realms fade gently back into the imagination that holds them. Let the questions we have asked together settle like seeds into the quiet ground of your mind, to grow in their own time, in their own way. Asgard and Olympus, Thor and Zeus, Valhalla and the marble palaces, the rainbow bridge and the cloud-wrapped summit, all of it is yours now. if it was not already. Carry it gently. Sleep well. And may your dreams be worthy of the gods. When you wake, the questions will still be here. That is the nature of good questions. They do not resolve and disappear. They deepen. They become more interesting the longer you sit with them. The question of what constitutes true power, whether it is Odin's patient, sacrificial wisdom, or Zeus's luminous authority, whether it is the warrior's courage in the face of doom, or the institution builder's patient construction of structures that outlast any individual life. This question will be different in the morning than it was tonight, because you will be different, because we are always in the middle of our own story, and the stories we encounter along the way become part of how we see. Carry Asgard and Olympus with you then, not as burdens, but as companions. Let the All-Father's willingness to sacrifice for understanding remind you that the deepest learning costs something and that it is worth the price. Let Zeus's capacity to build a lasting order remind you that structures of care and excellence are worth creating, even when they require tremendous effort to establish and maintain. Let Thor's fierce, uncomplicated love for the people he protects remind you that sometimes courage is not complicated at all. It is just showing up when you are needed. Let Athena's strategic wisdom remind you that intelligence in the service of genuine care is one of the most powerful forces in any world. These are not myths about people who lived long ago. They are mirrors. They have always been mirrors. And the faces that look back at us from them are, in some important sense, our own. Rest now. The realms are quiet. The bridge is still. And somewhere at the top of the world, in a hall that exists wherever human beings gather to tell stories and ask the questions that matter most, a feast is in progress. You are welcome at that table. Sleep well.